Hey e-commerce marketing podcast listener, I wanted to let you know that we have created 16 e-commerce marketing videos for you. You can download these free videos by visiting ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/videos or by texting the word videos to +1 480 418 1411. These step-by-step video marketing tutorials will teach you how to drive more traffic to your e-commerce website, how to get more backlinks to your e-commerce website, and how to optimize your website to get more paid customers. Get the videos right now by visiting ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/videos or by texting videos to +1 480 418 1411. Welcome to the e-commerce marketing podcast. Today's guest is Nick Loper, and we are going to be talking about content marketing. And Nick is actually a podcaster, and he runs the Side Hustle Show. Welcome to the podcast, Nick. How's it going?
Going well, Robert. Thanks so much for having me. We occasionally talk about e-commerce on the Side Hustle Show. It's a great way to start a business on the side, but we can dive into the content stuff too.
Okay, so talking about the Side Hustle Show, if you can just give us some background about the show and also tell us more about yourself.
Sure, it's all about the part-time business ideas that people can start with limited hours and a lot of times limited capital to get something. So I actually just recorded a show with a guy who's like a drop shipping expert. He's got this whole portfolio of e-commerce stores, but doesn't hold any inventory. Like, he set up these different dropship relationships with all these suppliers. I thought that was a really interesting way to go. We've talked to other people. The Amazon FBA business is really hot right now. So, of course, talked to lots of people about that. But been running the show 3 years, 180 episodes deep, and really, have a blast doing it because I learned so much from the guests as well. Just like, oh my gosh, that sounds cool. I want to try that. And it's been a ton of fun. My original side hustle was in footwear. It ran a footwear comparison shopping site. And so that was kind of on the shoulders of e-commerce. I didn't actually have a checkout cart on the site, but, worked with a lot of these different retailers on, conversion rates and how can we drive more sales and how can we get different exclusive coupon offers and stuff like that.
Okay. So just from starting with that as a side hustle, that led you to the Side Hustle Show. With all your side projects, you have had experience doing content marketing.
Yeah, that's been kind of the main driver of the past couple sites that I've done. The shoe business was more like database driven and really relied on paid traffic, like AdWords traffic, and kind of neglected the blog over there for too long. But yeah, the podcast I would consider content marketing. The blog over at Side Hustle Nation definitely would consider that. And I was actually just writing a post on it before this call. The myth is that content marketing is free. And done right, it doesn't cost a lot. It just costs a lot of time, like to create something that's like really, really cool and shareable. Okay.
And you also have experience with AdWords. If you were to compare the two between content marketing and AdWords, which one do you think has brought you more traffic and sales?
Right now, they're probably about even, but the AdWords stuff, I don't do it anymore. So the content stuff will definitely overpass it soon. The pay-per-click stuff is, it's that quick hit. You can immediately see if your page is going to convert. You can immediately see if this is going to be a profitable campaign. Whereas on the content side, it's a more long-term strategy where it's like, okay, I'm going to put this out into the world and I'm going to attract the audience that I want to eventually serve. And, a percentage of those people are going to sign up to my email list. A percentage of those people are going to, eventually buy my product. So it's like a much longer-term thing, casting a much wider net than, with the shoes specifically. It was like very long tail keywords that I was targeting. It was like, if you want this specific model of, Nike Shox green, women's or whatever. And, that was very high converting traffic.
Okay. Right before we get into, content marketing in general, I just had this question hit me right now. And I want to run it by you and just see what your response is going to be. In the last 12 months, what's the worst content marketing failure that you've had?
The content marketing failures, that can be the frustrating part of it because you don't really know like what's going to resonate with people before you publish it. So I had a post this spring, it was right around tax time, and I was like really, really proud of it. It was called, here's the most important number you won't find on your tax return. And it was all about like personal profitability. Like, your Uncle Sam doesn't care. They want to know how much you make. They don't give a crap about how much you actually kept at the end of the year after all your expenses. And I was like, that's the number that really, really counts. Like, how profitable were you as an individual? Something we think about all the time as businesses, not necessarily ever think about that on a personal level on an employee level. And, so I was really proud of this post and, had all these different examples about like saving rates and, all this nonsense. And I don't know, it did not have the viral reaction that I had hoped it would have, like trying to time it right around, tax day on April 15th and stuff. But that's one of the challenges of it. It's like, putting a body of work out there and you're going to have some hits and you're going to have some misses for sure.
Yeah, and that's after you did like, you got your friends and some influencers to share it in like social media, you did like some guest posts, got some links pointing back to it, and even after all of that, you still don't get the goal you're going after.
Yeah, I just never really caught on like I wanted it to.
Okay, I follow. So what should businesses do to find like the right content strategy and not fall or get into that situation that you just described right now? Like, how can they look at their business, look at their audience, look at their customers and think, okay, I think I found the right content strategy for them. How can I make sure that I get like good hits and it's just not a bunch of misses?
The way I've heard this explained, this actually comes from Dan Norris, who wrote a book called Content Machine or something like that. And he says you're creating content for the community, not necessarily about your business. And I see companies making this mistake. And I see people doing this like on Twitter all the time, where every tweet is just like, buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing. And it's like, that's not really very effective. But instead, it's like, okay, who do I want to buy my thing? And what might they be interested in? Like a couple e-commerce examples that come to mind. Number one, do you know Travis Marziani? He's co-host of like the Build My Online Store podcast.
Yeah, I'm familiar with, yes.
Yeah, so Travis, one of his businesses, aside from the podcast, is a store that sells dance clothing. And so their target customer, aside from individuals, are like dance studios themselves. Like, hey, we can go, B2B. If we can make, bulk orders and sell to the studios rather than individuals, like that's easier for us and more profitable too. So, one tactic that he used, a couple tactics actually, I thought were really smart. Number one was interviewing like the owners of dance studios, calling these people up, hey, we recognize you have this really successful dance studio. We'd love to interview you for our podcast or for our blog, actually. And it was like, very flattering for these dance studio owners because no one ever contacted them for an interview before. And it was a very subtle way of them getting their brand in front of these dance studio owners who are like also their target customers. They may never even heard of them before. And of course, they're going to share it with all of their moms and, everybody else who's, going to the studio because like, hey, these guys just featured me on their blog. So that was one thing he did was really smart. The other thing that he did was really smart was creating a list of like, here are the top 50 or 100 dance studios in the country. And of course, everyone who made the list, shared it with their Facebook audience, shared it with their friends. And, it was like, oh, we're number 39. And like there's a whole debate started over like, well, this person should be ranked higher. And so ended up getting a lot of attention from that. Another example, I actually just met this person at Podcast Movement a couple weeks ago. And she has a business, a store that sells like DIY wedding, like place cards and invitations or something. And one thing that she started doing is she hosts the DIY wedding podcast. And every show could be sponsored, by her store in a sense. It's like, she's providing, useful content for her target audience, like brides to be who are planning their dream wedding. And, oh, by the way, like I have this store on the side. So I thought that was a pretty smart way to go about it too.
So really when it comes down to it, as far as finding the right content strategy is forget about your business, forget about selling and forget about yourself and really focus on your customers and the audience and what they really need and just provide that to them without selling. And just by doing that, you should still be able to get your brand in front of them.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is kind of I wouldn't stop doing any, direct advertising or anything, but I think this is kind of an interesting channel to pursue as well, especially if you're on a lower budget. Then, if the budget doesn't allow dumping a bunch of money into AdWords or something like that, then, or the product listing ads is really hot for e-commerce, but it's another avenue of discovery, right?
Mm-hmm. And what are some numbers that businesses should be looking at to try and measure their content effectiveness?
The number, I guess the most important metric that I track is email subscribers. And if you have, a store and you're trying to sell products, like product sales is ultimately the number that you care about. So it doesn't really matter, how many eyeballs came to this thing. It's like, how many people stuck around? Am I going to be able to talk to them again in the form of an email or in the form of, like, did they buy something? And now I can retarget them on the retargeting side. So that would be an example. Like, if you did get a post that generated a bunch of traffic, make sure you have your Facebook, pixel firing, or your AdWords like pixel refiring, so you can retarget those people. Like, hey, they were interested in this content. Maybe they didn't buy today, but now I can get in front of them again, while they're out surfing the internet.
Okay, but you brought up email, so should the eventual goal for the content marketing, I guess it varies from business to business, but should it be collecting the emails, or should they be, you mentioned emails, you mentioned retargeting from Facebook or AdWords, so do they have to decide that as part of their content strategy, or would you just suggest that somebody collects the email?
So if you're driving somebody to a blog post, obviously having the remarketing pixel on that page would be really valuable to be able to get in front of that customer again. What's been effective for me has been like doing content specific like bonus offers to get people to sign up for an email list. So instead of like one site-wide thing, like here are the 5 things you need to know to have a perfect DIY wedding or something. I don't know what her example would be. But, what would be an example? So the, one post I've had that did really well recently was like, here are 200 different ways to make extra money outside your day job. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is my perfect content for the audience that I want to serve, people who want to make money outside of their day job. Like that's what they're all after. And the opt-in offer on that page was just a PDF of that post. Like, hey, this post is 7,000 words long. It's kind of a lot to read in one sitting. If you want to download it for later, you can here. And, several hundred people have opted to do that. And so there are different ways to do that. Like I've seen people do checklists and action guides, a bunch of different options you could do. I'm trying to,
discounts.
Yeah, on e-commerce especially, that's like, get 10% off your first order when you sign up for our newsletter. That's a pretty popular one. Or, we'll send you your first coupon within the next 10 minutes. So, you keep reading, but hey, if you want to save money, sign up here.
So I like that you call yours bonus offers, because I've seen different names out there. I've seen opt-in bribes, I've seen lead magnets, and now I had yours bonus offer. So which one do you like? It's just so funny. Everybody has their own name for it.
Yes, the content upgrade, the lead magnet, the subscribe bribe.
I mean, but the bottom line is when you do offer this and have those as part of your content, it does work, and it does, you do collect emails.
Yeah, so I was reviewing a site yesterday that was a store selling furniture, and as soon as you load the page, there was a pop-up that said, join our mailing list. And my feedback to them was like, that's not a very compelling offer. Like I don't want to join anybody's mailing list just for the sake of joining a mailing list. But it's like, what's in it for me? And so, you could tweak that to be like you said, hey, get 10% off your first order. It could be like, be the first to hear about, new styles when they come out. Just something to say like, okay, there's going to be some value at the end of this rather than just a barrage of pitches.
Yeah, I agree, but it's also good to see that as far as that business and just being in business, you do have a lot of stress and you're trying to, you're trying different strategies, and sometimes people do get overwhelmed, but at least you do see, even though some businesses might have an offer like that, you still appreciate the fact that they're making the effort or they're on the right path. And like for you, it's good that you provided them that feedback, telling them, hey, okay, this is good that you're doing this. Maybe you need to do it like this. I can understand as a business how you might end up, you might hear this strategy is good, but maybe you don't have the time or maybe you don't have the staff to perfect it or just to invest the time that requires in seeing that channel all the way.
Right. Well, you're putting out this podcast. That's content marketing. Have you found that an effective channel for your business?
Yes. With the podcast, it is mainly for me. It's helped build relationships. It's helping build relationships and do online networking with some influencers. So like how I have you on here, and just from this, we can just slowly build our relationship, and that's the main thing the main benefit I've gotten from the podcast. We do collect emails from it, but my main goal with the podcast, and I always have this note when I'm recording the podcast, is I always say this is for the listeners. That's my goal. I want to make sure the listeners are getting value out of it. I'm not necessarily being motivated by just trying to think about our business, etc. I want listeners to get value out of it, and I always remind myself that, because one thing that I do have, or like I might think of it in myself as a negative thing, is the fact that I do have an accent, and I'm always thinking, are listeners like struggling with this? But I always have to remind myself it's for the listeners, and I just want to provide value for them.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I think putting trying to serve that community first, and I think that you're doing a good job of that.
So let's go back to the content marketing. What if a business they find the right content strategy and they know what metrics to look at, and when they look at the numbers, they're like, hey man, what's up? What's happening? How come my content isn't working? What do I need to improve it? So do you have a case or maybe a strategy or a tip you can give businesses that are trying to improve their content marketing because it's not hitting or it's not becoming as viral, just like the example you provided with your own content for the taxes?
Well, the common advice is, see what else is out there and then create something that's 10 times better, or, really aim to create the best resource for, whatever problem you're trying to solve. And that's probably pretty cliche, but I think it's true, because, that's the kind of stuff that gets noticed. And when you do go into the marketing portion of it, where you're doing kind of your email outreach to say, hey, I wrote this thing, I think you'd like it. Like, you have something that you're really proud to share, versus some of and I've been guilty of writing these posts too. They're like, they're kind of self-serving, or they're just, a 500-word piece about, it wasn't anything remarkable, right? It's like kind of the Seth Godin's purple cow thing. Where it's like, to stand out, you got to do something that's outstanding.
Mm-hmm. I see that. I agree. And lastly, what are some tools that people should be using for content marketing?
Tools. WordPress. It's pretty much the primary tool. Actually, WordPress, and then the podcast. So I have my podcasting mic here that was $50 on Amazon. The other tools, like as far as like social media stuff, I've found Pinterest in the last 8 or 9 months to be really, really effective. Mm-hmm. And the secret sauce there was joining or requesting to join. Because you kind of have to message the moderator, the owner of these groups, but requesting to join these different group boards that are related to your niche, and then pinning your content to those boards. That has kind of the interesting effect. Like, it doesn't matter how many followers you have on. Like, I had fewer than 100 followers when I started this, and all of a sudden, if this group board has 5,000 followers, mm-hmm. and you pin your content there, all of a sudden you got that in front of 5,000 people. It didn't matter that you only had 100 followers. So that's been working really, really well. I can actually did a whole episode and whole kind of recap on that. So I'm happy to send the link over there if you want to link that one up in the show notes.
Definitely. Any final thoughts on content marketing?
Have fun with it. It's really, really time consuming to do it well. So one thing that I kind of have had to get over is feeling the pressure to come out with something like every Monday. You got to have this new post every Monday. It's got to be amazing. It's like, just why don't you slow down, create something that's really, really good. And it doesn't matter, when you when you publish that. And of course, if you can do that consistently, awesome. But don't create more noise on the internet, for the sake of creating more noise, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And if listeners wanted to reach you, what's the best place to reach you?
I'm just over at sidehustlenation.com. If you're looking for some part-time business ideas, stop on by. We'd love to have you.
Okay. And at the end of my podcast, I always ask this question. What's the one thing an e-commerce business can do right now to help the business grow or get traffic or get sales? Just one thing that they can do right now as they're listening to this or as soon as they're done with the podcast. Other than go to the Side Hustle Show, check out the Side Hustle Show. What's the one thing you'd recommend?
I would focus on building your email list, and so that's been the biggest driver for me. And so the content drives traffic back to the site, and the traffic to the site drives signups to the email list, and the email list drives sales.
Okay, Nick, thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing some of the content marketing experience, and look forward to having you on soon.
You bet, man. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the e-commerce marketing podcast. Join the e-commerce marketing podcast Facebook group to learn, connect, collaborate, and grow with other e-commerce marketers at ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/FB. ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/FB. Subscribe to us on iTunes by searching for e-commerce marketing podcast, and please leave a rating and a review. Thank you for listening. See you next time.